Hello and welcome to TFT Worlds, Day 2, Game number 3. Enjoy.
Meta like this, it is totally respectable, and I can see a lot of players sort of waiting to see if they get that 4 cost or 5 cost that leans them into a certain direction, and then using that to spike. Especially when you have generic items like a Morello's here that can go on a lot of champions, waiting and sort of making sure that you can spike in the direction you want to. Let's say, for example, Mega Man ends up in a Tryndamere game again. Using it right now, that may not be the best bet as there's no strikers, there's no Chemtechs on the board. But being able to save that later, that can be the difference between a 5 Chemtech 4 challenger and a 5 Chemtech 6 challenger. And so I kind of can see why they would do it this way as well, and I think it is a smart choice either way.
Yeah, Mega Man coming in as one of the reroll specialists. I mean, not necessarily rerolling all the time, but looks to try and get those reroll angles if possible, as we saw Alan yesterday being deployed in his arsenal. Going against Luli, who has a level 5 at 2-2 board with what looks like to be full scrap. Oh my goodness, it's just so hard to even kill a single champion full 10 damage at 2-2 for Mega Man.
Yeah, now, question for you, Froden, because oftentimes when I'm playing or I'm looking at the game, I like to do a lot of these very aggressive levels. This is the level 5 at 2-2, the level 6 at 2-6. We even saw yesterday the level 7 at 3-1. How do you feel about those kind of situations instead of following sort of the normal flow?
I mean, I like breaking the norm. I think it's really exciting when you're able to get like a strong read on your potential matchups. But I will say that it is very quietly a play that can sabotage your entire game. As we hold on and take a second at Milk Guy's perspective, who has 3 mercs, debating whether or not he wants to play a 4th unit or full-on cell. Doesn't make Alawi 2, doesn't want to get too strong, and goes up against a level 5 player who is very likely to crush him anyways. However, I think it's still wise that Milk didn't make this Alawi 2, because in the event where he needs to ever play an Alawi 1 against another weak board in the lobby, he needs to have that optionality, so I think it's actually very wise.
Yeah, this is a position I think Milk is very comfortable in. I think this is exactly where he wants to be. We can't really see how many, like when he got the Mercs online, was it just now at 2-3 or was it earlier? But Mercenary into, he's got Backfoot as his augment. He's got some items that make for some really good Sivir items. This feels like the position he wants to be in. We saw yesterday that game where he was able to turn the Mercenary into the Voracious Appetite Mutants, and he ended the game with like 70 extra gold worth of stuff on his bench. Like, that was just an insane game he played yesterday. So we'll see here if he can turn it around, but rounds like that last one where he takes 10 damage from the scrap, that can be a lot to take in. And so already at 74 health going into the Carousel, you don't want to see him below 60, for example, going into, say, 2-7. And so we'll have to see if he can avoid some really tough losses here while keeping that loss streak going.
You can see that Milk hasn't played Megumin yet, and that is the thorn in his side. If he knew that everybody else in the lobby was level 5, he'd be very much okay in focusing on health preservation. But it's clear that one other person is trying to also lose streak, and so Milk has to thread the needle once more. Frontline Misfortune goes up against Quan Luong, who has picked the Hextech emblem as we saw before, and it is still unusual. Want to see what he ends up doing with that. But yeah, Milk can take another big loss.
Yeah, this is exactly what we're talking about. We didn't want to happen for Milk. He takes another 10 damage. He's at 64. One more round like this will knock him to 54, which would be insanely low. It's also putting him in the position where he can't buy this Alawi 2, because as you talked about, he wants to avoid Mega Man. Mega Man is his counter here, and this is the bane of the Mercenary player, being stuck in this position where you want to strengthen your board just a little bit, try to preserve that health, but there's one other player in the lobby countering you. And this is what can make playing Mercenary really hard at the highest level.
Absolutely. Now, we can go back to the previous topic we discussed before more, which is, being able to aggressively level and when is it right, when versus wrong. There's 2 aspects of what I really like about Luli's position. One, he is actually strong. I think a lot of players level, but they actually don't get that much stronger. They play a 1-star unit. Maybe they think a synergy is like really impactful when it's not. Luli makes a very calculated risk here. The second is he still is making money anyways through the form of Yordles and potentially a Gangplank, able to get an assassination. And Print to go with the Plunder does not get it, but it's the option. And by that measurement, I think that Luli's in a great spot. And as long as he's able to get this win here, should be the one streaking at the end of stage 2 and putting a lot of pressure. I think that's the third reason why I like it. If you know players like Megumin and Milk are open forwarding effectively, you can put so much extra damage that's going to give him less room for error.
Yeah, for sure. The one thing that had me a little worried was that he didn't have a 2-star like Ezreal, for example, to really strengthen that board, but he did have the 2-star Poppy and the 2 Bodyguard. And unless somebody in the lobby has built that Last Whisper, those 2 Bodyguards will prevent a lot of damage, putting you in a pretty good spot. Do have to call out, looking around, by the way, Milk did take another 10 damage, sitting at 54 already. This is much lower than you want to be at, unfortunately. Megamin also sitting at 58, so we're seeing a little bit more high-pressure lobby than we've seen in the past. People taking 10, even 12 damage from these level 5, level 6 players. So this is a very different pace than I think we saw in the first game in this lobby.
It's a good point, and it's also a mark of experienced players as well. Yes, Lilu and Luli, the Chinese players, are more than capable of playing open fort loose streak, very similar to what Megumin and Milk are doing. At the same time, they are also capable of playing high tempo, as you can see. That's more inspired from the Korean region that likes to also do this kind of very aggressive style. So I like the versatility that we're seeing coming out of some of the Chinese players, especially in a lobby where there's several of them that could influence how that ebb and flow is going to go.
Yeah, for sure. And I really love this trait web for a level 6 comp. Again, you've got the 4 scrap with some big shields. You're going to get extra item value from this cloak and this rod on the Ziggs and the Blitzcrank. You've got the free Yordle generating even more revenue, already putting him back to level 6, almost 30 gold. And then you've got the Twin Shot making the Corki, so that way you've got multiple threats in the Ziggs, the Corki, and the Gangplank. Unfortunately, does get Blitzcrank grabbed here, and as I mentioned, the weakness being the Last Whisper. With that Last Whisper on the Caitlyn, is able to tear through pretty quick. But thankfully, level 5 to level 6, it's looking pretty close, but I think the Caitlyn is going to clean this up. And again, that Last Whisper doing a lot of work. Lulu also saving the Caitlyn there. So unfortunately, does sell the Ezreal to hit his level 30, but does lose his streak, which is not what he was hoping for, but I think he'll be able to adapt around it.
Yeah, just not a lot of respect for Blitzcrank. When the primary damage dealer is the first thing getting pulled because you're trying to max greed the Zeke's Herald positioning. I mean, Luli ate the dust and got Blitzcrank pulled twice. I mean, that tells you everything you need to know about his damage issue. If Blitzcrank is pulling twice in the early stages of the game, it usually means you have a significant DPS issue that you need to resolve. And so Luli loses his streak, unable to keep it up, and not going to really roll here because he already has at least recovered most of his economy thanks to those Yordle printing, and even has that backup option here of putting in that Vex if needed, or to sell her for a Geekon.
Yeah, for sure. We're getting a look at the other side here. Megamin leveled up to level 6 and is playing that AP tree we talked about earlier, but is missing the blue buff to really make this brand shine, and unfortunately he is going to lose again, but thankfully it's a pretty... Oh, Malzahar almost pulled it out there. Almost, but does take a loss, which is actually pretty good. He keeps his loss streak while only taking the minimum damage. But again, we're at 3-2, and we're seeing 2 players below 50 already as we go into the second augment choice. That's going to be really rough here. Now, you look at the augments for Megamin here, and both Battle Mage and Archangel are not bad choices here. Archangel's not really going to synergize well with that brand, but might synergize well with, like, for example, your Vex, making the Vex have a much stronger shield if it can cast twice or even 3 times. Ends up going with that, so definitely looking like the choice. Can make your Malzahar do a bunch of extra damage. So for an Arcanist comp, I think that's a great choice. I think Celestial Blessing was also a possible option, as you're looking for maybe an RE late game and you don't have that Gunblade. But this is a situation, and we'll get to see maybe why people haven't been playing this tree so much, because again, he really needs that blue buff to turn this comp on.
Yeah, I think he wants that blue buff. At the same time, I look at this Lucian, I look at this Arcanist emblem, and I'm thinking about the possibility of maybe playing without that, and instead prioritizing an item like Static Shiv. I think Megumin, is very much resolute on playing the Arcanist because of that emblem, but he actually has a lot more flexibility than meets the eye at the moment. So we'll see how that develops. For now, obviously just trying to stop his losing streak. He has not played Milk yet. Both players still on a 7-loss streak and still not going up against it. Brosian is going to 4-0 him again, and this is devastating. You are the one that's below 41st. I mean, Milk probably will lose here as well. but it's not a good sign for Megumin at all because Milk has the Mercenary bailout. I don't see the bailout for Megumin.
Yeah, I agree there. And you even saw the VIP brand on the other side with no items, just being able to output that much more damage and that much more CC. So I really hope we stay here on Milk and see if he can turn this around here, because like you said, with the Mercenary out at least, if he can cash out right now, there's still room for a comeback, right? And Milk's also the kind of player I think might even go to 3-6, go one more round to really maximize those gains, especially knowing where he is in the standings and knowing that he needs a couple strong finishes to move up in those standings. So I think it is actually the correct play to even possibly greed to 4-1 just to guarantee that, but it's so risky, and you've taken so much damage in the early game, so we'll have to see what he chooses to go with here.
No, call me crazy, but I think he can afford to lose a couple more times. I don't know.
Yeah.
He has the Sivir ready. He has the Last Whisper. He has the Zeeks, and I don't know if people are going to put significant pressure. I mean, I bet if he doesn't even roll, there's a chance that he goes up against Megumin and wins anyways, because Megumin's board is not great, and we'll see whether or not he is able to roll down and hit enough at 3-5.
Yeah, I agree. I actually think this is the right play. Leveling to 7, getting the Sivir, but not spending any gold. Because if he can, and look at that, we get the Megaman matchup here. On the other side, though, we do see the Lucian getting all the Arcanist, has the blue buff, has the Jeweled Gauntlet. So this is probably going to be a loss. The Quinn did a little bit of work there, but not enough. But either way, I still think this was the correct play from Milk. Maximize that chest, and again, knowing where he is in the standings, he knows he needs a big finish here. And so, like I said, I could even see Milk greeting one more round here to really try to maximize it. That chest is getting very large. We're going to have to see what the dice roll is here that he gets from it. Does get the boat. That's not one of the better rolls, unfortunately, but hopefully, again, I can still see him going one more loss here.
Yeah, he's just a minor upgrade here to Gnar 2, and the trick will be how he manages his cash out while trying to do it during a turn. He doesn't have a lot of time to do it as well. Usually when you cash out around 3-5, 3-6, you also have the PvE round, the Wolves. So you have a little bit of a breather to figure out your transition. Milk won't have any of it. He has to immediately know exactly what he needs to do. He needs to be very quick about it, and he has to be precise because he doesn't have much life as he goes up against Brojan, who didn't level. This board is actually quite beatable, depending on whether or not Brand's able to take on the Gnar 2. Gnar jumps and able to tank, and Milk just cashes out without spending a single roll beyond 50.
Yeah, that was a big hit for Milk here. Cashing out pretty much for free here without having to really roll down at all. That's going to put him in a great situation to basically go level 8 at 4-1, hit that Sivir hopefully, and you can see this transition. This is this area that I think Milk is just so comfortable in. Gets a Sivir out of one of the orbs, gets a Nico. That's instantly Sivir 2 right now. This is exactly where he wants to be. Has a Quicksilver already. I imagine that's going to get slammed here. Has the Zeeks. This is his comfort zone. And with 26 health, I think that's actually a lot for him. 26 at this point is good, and so we could easily see this become the first place comp. You even look at his augments, and his augments are exactly what he wants. He's got back foot, that's going to speed up the Sivir. He's got weak spot, which is even more armor penetration, and the free anti-heal that's being spread by the Sivir. Like we said, goes level 8, hits that, has a spare Nico. This is exactly where he wants to be.
Yeah, and he's handling it very nicely, and I wonder if he wants to make the third item through Aruna's Hurricane or greed even further. He could play around the fact that he can get a Rage Blade, but he also can play around the fact that he has 2 more bells and go for a second Zeeks. We know that the Sivir players love to stack them as much as they can. Speaking of stacking 2 Tryndamere 2s with Knife's Edge, this entire comp is predicated on pressuring the Sivir 1s, but Milk has a strong Sivir 2 board, and I don't know if the Tryndamere can get it done. The Edge of Night trying to get rid of the Sivir, but there's no more support left. Does manage to get the spinning slash, and I think it's just not enough. Wow, if that was a Sivir 1, you could see that Lilu was ready to pounce, but Milk not giving him any openings.
Yeah, for sure. Like, now Milk is just so far ahead of the rest of the lobby, because again, we talked about how the pace of this lobby has been, everyone's usually going level 8 at about 4-5 and doing their roll downs. Milk's already level 8, already has done his roll down, and is sitting on an extra 40 gold. He is just going to be comfortable, and so now we're going to switch over to Megamin, who's kind of our other player sitting at the bottom right now. Did hit that Ari, and talked about that blue buff earlier. These are very good items, but now going back to that augment choice, though, this is a situation where I feel like he'd probably wished he'd taken the Celestial Blessing instead of the Archangel, unfortunately.
Yeah, it kind of depends. There's a couple of ways to go about it, but the lack of the gunblade, as you said, is a very big deal. We'll see. It's kind of a glass cannon build. Might end up being favorable against a bunch of melee champions, but the disarming assault gives a temporary reprieve from the Ahri second cast. Oh dear, needs to get a couple more autos off, and Tryndamere spin to win with the backstab onto the Ahri, and Megaman trying to get it done, but Zach has so much HP. Get over here, Ziggs!
Oh, Zach doing his best Scorpion impression and taking down that Ziggs. That was a close fight. Definitely could have gone either way. But that's kind of what we're talking about there, right? The Tryndamere had the Bloodthirster to get a little bit of extra sustain and stay alive just a little bit longer. Whereas, unfortunately, this Ahri, as you mentioned, very glass cannon. If it can get the kills, great. But if not, we may see Mega Man, unfortunately, go out in 8th place here. Especially as everyone starts to roll down, hit their level 4 or 5 spikes, hit level 8. He is still level 7. He has basically no chance of hitting level 8 here. This is not the spot you want to be in.
I missed the part of the patch notes where Zach apparently has Blitzcrank range on his Yoink. Let me read you what Yoink says. Yoink, mana 60/100. Zach stretches his arms up to 3 hexes to pull the most distant enemies towards him. That wasn't 3 hexes at all, Mort. Come on.
I mean, when there's only one valid target, sometimes Zach's like to stretch his arms out just a little bit further, so...
I know.
You know.
Felt like I was watching Meteos back in the day from LCS do some crazy Zach shenanigans, but I digress as Megaman takes another loss here going to 4-4. Can he turn it around? He's at 11 HP. Does he even get the opportunity to play for his 3rd augment, Mort?
Yeah, it's going to be tough. He does get the spatula here, which is pretty nice. Could possibly be another Arcanist spat, things like that. If I remember correctly, he might have even had one on his bench. I know someone did, so... we'll have to see, but like I said, 11 health here. He should be able to live. I don't think he'll take 11, but it's going to be really close, and we could see another 4-6 departure because, again, he just hasn't been able to spike, and these are not the items. So, yeah, it does have the other spatula, as I mentioned, so that's going to be a Tactician's Crown, which is a bit of a nice spike, allowing him to play something like the Braum, for example. Just get a little bit extra in, allowing him to roll down here, But again, overall, this Ahri is just not the right items that you're looking for, and unfortunately, I think we may see him continue to lose these fights.
Yeah, I think that there's a couple shops here that Megaman had options. He could have tried to go for 5 Syndicate. I think it's worth dropping a couple of the Arcanists to give Ahri that spell vamp that she really wants and more that tankiness across the whole team. But we'll see, going up against Milk, who has that 2-star Sivir and that double Z's like we talked about, and a Banshee's to boot. So a lot of support, and I think this is just too much. Megaman is dead, exact lethal, not able to see his 3rd augment. Devastating 8th here for a Latin player.
Yeah, that is not what you want. It always feels bad. You don't get to see your 3rd augment. You don't get to see your last batch of items. So that's feels bad. On the other side, though, we did see Milk had that Silco also, which gets the Sivir casting even quicker. So yeah, just a lot of power there. And so switching over to Solo Lucas here has the Strikers, Knife's Edge, Celestial Blessing. Looking like he's playing at least an Aurelia. It's hard to see behind everything. But the Striker Crest, not necessarily a bad choice here. Celestial Blessing, also pretty good if you're playing around that Aurelia. Knife's Edge is a little harder to play around. Does end up taking the Celestial Blessing. Okay, and we're kind of getting a glimpse of the comp here now. Much more Jinx-based, so I really like the Celestial Blessing choice, allowing you to play Jinx on the back line. Still have that power up with the Scrap, and get that Jinx online to heal, because that Jinx will output a ton of damage. And so Celestial Blessing, actually a pretty good augment here.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I think a lot of people tunnel on the idea that, Scrap and Strikers, I have 4 Scrap, maybe I just pivot into 4 Strikers. I don't think there's any pivot needed. This is good recognition from Lucas. Almost the entire board is 2-star except for Jinx, meaning that he's already thinking about level 9 because you can't reliably roll for Jinx 2 with 4% per shop window for a single legendary. So if he can stabilize and win out from here to go to 9, he'll take it. And I think that he doesn't want to make his board potentially weaker. Celestial Blessing, an excellent pick, rolls a Giant Slayer to boot. Once more, as we look at Li Lu, who has also another 4-scrap Innovator build, but way less successful as he takes big damage. Milk has finished his stage 4 with a full streak, and here comes the Mercenaries. As we take a look at the rest of the lobby, we do have a big separation of HP from 1st to 2nd. but it's quite close from Kwanglang all the way down to even just Lucas. It's still anybody's game for who lands in the top 4 more.
Yeah, for sure. Right now, it's coming down to the point where I think, everyone's got their sort of late stage 4 boards. We're seeing their 4 costs, whether it be the Jins, the Sivers, things like that. But we also saw some people take like high 5. We're seeing like the Zeri ones, the Jinx ones. A lot of this is going to come down to who hits their 2-star legendaries, right? We're even seeing Luli here, hold a lot of their econ, because if they can get that 2-star Zeri, that's going to be a very big spike. We saw earlier Lucas with the Jinx. If he can hit that 2-star Jinx, that's going to be a big spike. So a lot of this is going to come down to this stage. And we see on the sidebar there, Milk already hitting level 9 here. So a lot of this is also going to come down to, if Milk is in your rotation, try not to bleed out too much, because everyone right now is going to be trying to buy time, hit their level 9, and hopefully catch up to Milk. Because again, we do know that Striker board does have a very high cap. It's going to be tough. But if you can stay alive, and so that's where players like Broyson, for example, are going to be really happy that they bought all this extra health in the early game.
Yep, it's a good point. If we take a look at VCLF from Brazil go up against Lilu, who hasn't hit yet. This is a great time to play Lilu, who has 8 Trindamirs and 7 Zac, 7 Warwicks. Nothing is finalized, and yet, look at the power of this Trindamir. He will not be denied. Is that set for Trindamir? Look at his spinning slash. And all of a sudden, the power of the Challenger board has arrived, and that is Lilu not even in his final form, Mort.
Yeah, for sure. If that ever becomes a Tryndamere 3, you start to get worried. Those are some great Tryndamere options, showing the power of Edge of Night, which I think we've clearly seen become a favorite on champions like Tryndamere, Jinx, Kai'Sa, things like that. There it is. There's the Tryndamere 3. This is such good items for this Tryndamere. The one weakness here is that he's still very vulnerable to CC from things like Braum, Galio, things like that, but even has the Cybernetic Shell to give him a ton of armor. He has the magic resist from that Bloodthirster. Does end up getting Zephyred, so this is a bit of a worst case for him. But we even saw at the end, he might be able to 1v5, and since Kai'Sa has applied Morello to the entire team, this is still a fight he could win.
Oh, the cleanse from the Edge of Night, and now it's a 1v1. Tryndamere wins the duel in the face, heads up. Quanlong had the future sight and was able to capitalize on Lilu, who is sleeping a little bit at the wheel. Had to decide whether or not he wanted to sell this 2-star Warwick to complete the 3-star Zac. But hey, his board is so strong, and he has the tankiness, thank goodness for the Cyber Shell, to give that extra health and armor, so Tryndamere wasn't going to get bursted immediately when his armor was shredded. And so you see that he's able to stay alive, and the name of the game is exactly what you said, Mort. Everyone's afraid of Milk. If you can keep your life as high as possible, you have to budget for the fact that there's a very strong chance that Milk overwhelms. He hits Jinx too.
Yeah, his board is like... I'm pretty confident his board is just out of control, and so again, everyone else is trying to avoid this. Here we get a look at Luli, who has the Zeri 2, but on the other side we see that Jace 2 with almost just as good of items. That Jace is going to output a ton of damage, and so a lot of this is going to come down to positioning. The Zeri is moving around. Jace gets a big cast here, though. Doesn't quite able to finish it off, and so Zeri takes it here, and now we're starting to see these big legendary battles here as we go into the 5th carousel.
Whew. VCLF, Lucas, now down to just single digits. It would be a travesty to see the 2 Brazilian players hold hands in 6 and 7. Can they turn it around? Looks like Lucas, who hasn't decided he's first pick, he almost lost his priority. As Borjan also kind of wandering about, it seems like it's all chaos, anarchy in the stage 5 carousel. As we do want to point out one thing, Luli also has Metabolic Accelerator. I was noticing that his health kept climbing higher and higher. I was like, wait, I thought he was at 16. No, 18? Now he's at 20. That might be a huge factor for Luli moving forward, especially with big power coming online.
Yeah, for sure. I like the Hand of Justice pick here. That's going to be pretty good here. I also have to call out Broyson, who we mentioned earlier at 75 health, already down to 23. We still have 7 players left alive right now. This is going to be really close, and I think we're going to start seeing people fall off pretty quickly here. Move over to Broyson's board here, and we can see he's kind of struggling here. A 1-star Zeri, a 1-star Ahri. This is not the board you want at this stage of the game. Goes up against this Jace 2, which again, really good items on this Jace 2. So that's going to be tough. Also looking at, BCLF, who's got that Jace 2. This is going to be the matchup for, I think, 7th place here. And we just see the Jace with those big AoE explosions just outputting so much damage here. almost dies, doesn't have any healing, unfortunately. The Lucian's not going to be able to cut it, though, and I think that's going to be it for Lucas, unfortunately.
It's going to be a Brazil civil war, and VCLF gets the right to play for top 4. Brosian takes major damage. What a crazy turnaround it would be if he's unable to convert his massive HP lead into a top 4. He does hit the Nana 2. Oh my goodness, what is happening? Luli not only has Zeri 2, but now has Galio 2 as well. And we take a look at Brosian's board. He has 7 seconds to roll down, but more importantly, he has to itemize and position for his opponents. He hits a Victor 2. That is so big if he's able to get everything online. And he's now going up against Luli, who has all 2-star legendaries as well.
Yeah, this is going to be rough. Does manage to slam the items just barely here, but that Zeri is perfectly positioned. Does get Zyra ulted, though. The Zyra ult making a massive difference here. The Zeri cutting through. Victor ult not quite enough to get Zeri. Zeri's about to bleed out. Zeri is down. Renata kept everyone alive, and Broyson manages to stay alive just barely with that gunblade.
Walks away with a little extra credit as well. Gets a Tom Kench tier. That tier could prove to be quite valuable for a couple of reasons. You can get an earlier cast on a champion, but he also has meditation and makeshift armor, so it's a little bit awkward. Some people are under the belief that it's actually good to give Silco an item at times because you don't want him to be casting too quickly with meditation to destroy units, and then all of a sudden he's hitting Renata maybe a little bit too early in the fight. However, given his current state of his front line, I think Brosian might want to employ that as best as he can. As we take a look at some of the other players, checking with Kwang Long, who did start off with that very interesting Hex Tech emblem, and is now playing 4 Hex Tech, 4 Scrap, 4 Striker, the 4-4-4-2 mode, if you will.
Yeah, for sure. Now, clearly Milk is still the favorite, I think, here. We can even see now, thanks to that future sight, that we're about to go up against Milk here, so this is going to be a hard matchup. But this is right around the time where everyone else has finally caught up to that scaling. And so unless Milk has got something really crazy up his sleeve, we could see some things not go that way. Now again, Milk's still probably the favorite here because we know he has that Jace 2, Jinx 2, so a lot more power. But maybe with a good future sight. Milk, though, doesn't quite get it. So yeah, able to Zephyr. That Sivir, though, cutting loose on both sides. Sivir versus Sivir matchup. Always a tricky one to read. It's not looking great, though. Yeah, Milk Sivir is just still untouched, and that's just going to show you the power of all those legendaries. Plus, got to call out, Milk got a 3rd augment in Disintegrator, which is amazing on Sivir. This is just Milk's comfort zone, and so we see that best case Sivir, that power up, and now we're all just like that. We're down to our final 2, and yeah, this is, I think, exactly the game Milk needed to get back in the standings.
Pacing of this lobby is absolutely absurd. It's 6-2! And we're down to our final 2 players. We might not even see the stage 6 carousels. Take a look, split view, side by side. Tryndamere reroll going up against Striker, Scraps, anchored by Sivir as Milk goes with the right side, trying to see if he can prioritize the Zephyr to the front line. And Lulu has dodged it as we have the face down, the 6 challengers with the mutants. Can they get it done? Is Tryndamere the carry? The bullet that he needed to take down the Scrap Sivir? Will Milk be able to make the comeback? As Tryndamere does cleanse, but he's still not able to get to the back line. There's just so much shield to chop through. Way too much damage, and Lilu's now down to his last life.
Yeah, between all the power of these champions, again, you look at this board here, and it's 2-star Jinx, 2-star Sivir, 2-star Jace, even has that 3 Innovator just for a little bit extra, has the Frozen Heart Echo, and combine that all with the 4 Scrap, which we've seen time and time again. These augments are perfect. I can't say enough about how Milk is basically doing a victory lap at this point, has 6 Jinxes. We won't see the Jinx 3, but even this Tryndamere, even if he manages to take down that Sivir, still has the Jinx and the Jace to toy with. It's just not enough damage to get through the insane value that Milk has on his board. Oh. And Milk even manages to land the Zephyr.
And that should do it. Milk started off his day with an 8th place and a 7th. He needed something big, and big result he got. Milk from North America is going to close out Game 3 with a much-needed victory.
Awesome.
And this is the end of Game 3. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next game.